When police reports are not available, newspaper articles are my go-to for information on unsolved homicides and missing persons, especially older cases, where reporters had a lot more access to officials and the cases they were investigating. The first week of reporting is where you will find the most crucial information. Now watch, listen, as we go back in time to keep this unsolved case in the spotlight, so the victim's family and friends had the possibility, and maybe even the probability, of getting resolution and justice in their case. This is their story. Columbia, Missourian, March 20th, 1950. Page 1. Girl strangled after struggle. Police believe victim was telephoning for help when attacker reached her. A 13-year-old babysitter was raped and murdered Saturday night after her attacker interrupted what investigating officers believe was a desperate attempt to telephone police for help. Miss Janett Christman, daughter of C.E. Christman, owner of Ernie's Steakhouse, was found dead at 1:35 a.m. yesterday by Mr. and Mrs. Ed Romick on the floor of their living room, 1015 Stewart Road, with an electric iron cord twisted around her neck. Girl killed by strangling. Dr. M. Pinson Neal, university pathologist, who performed the autopsy, said the girl had been raped and the death was caused by asphyxiation by strangulation. He fixed the time of death between 10:30 and 11 p.m. The Jefferson Junior High School student's charge, Greg Romick, 3, who was sleeping in the back bedroom, was not disturbed. An immediate investigation under the direction of prosecuting attorney Carl F. Sapp was begun by Columbia Police, the Sheriff's Office, and the State Highway Patrol. Fingerprints found. Fingerprints taken from inside the house and footprints in the yard are now being studied by the Highway Patrol laboratory technicians. Bloodhounds from Angelo Prison Farm were used in an attempt to track the killer. Romick told police that he and his wife discovered the body when they returned home from Moon Valley Villa, where they had played bridge during the evening. They checked at once to see if their child was safe and then called the police. Romick said he noticed when he picked up the phone receiver that it was not placed properly on the hook. Police telephone call. Earlier that evening at 10:55 p.m., Mrs. Romick had phoned her home and got a busy signal. About the same time, Patrolman Roy McCowan said he received a phone call at the police station and heard what sounded like a girl screaming hysterically. The connection was broken suddenly before she could identify herself. Police Chief E.M. Gene Pond said the call could not be traced because the test board at the telephone company is not manned at that late hour. He added that the call was probably of too short a duration to check even if someone had been at the test board. Upon questioning the other 5 subscribers whose phones are on the Romick party line, Chief Pond found that the last call had been placed at 10:35 p.m. This information supports the theory that the signal heard by Mrs. Romick was Miss Christman's vain effort to get help. Girl's hair matted with blood. Police Lieutenant Joe Douglas was the first to arrive at the Romick home shortly after 1:35 a.m. Miss Christman was lying on the floor near the piano in a pool of blood, he said. Her hair was matted with blood, and there was cuts on her head and face. She was wearing a red scarf around her shoulders, a maroon sweater, a light beige skirt, white bobby socks, and low-heel shoes. Her clothing was disarranged. Her coat was on the divan, and her purse and gloves were on the piano. Lieutenant Douglas called Chief Pond, who in turn notified Sapp, Sheriff Glenn Powell, and State Highway Patrol headquarters in Jefferson City. Dr. Roland Ladinson, summoned by Lieutenant Douglas, pronounced the girl dead. Dr. Harry Griffith, coroner, was called also. Romack told police he picked up Miss Christman at her home above the restaurant, 1005 East Walnut Street, and took her to his house. The brunette teenager had worked for the family before, and Romack said he had shown her how to load and shoot a shotgun, which he kept in a living room closet. The girl evidently had no chance to use the gun. Bloodhounds find trail. Gus Larrabee, superintendent of the Allegor Prison Farm, drove to Columbia with 3 bloodhounds and joined the investigating officers at 3 a.m. The dogs picked up a trail which led them to a bus stop at West Boulevard and West Ash Street, but lost the scent there. Pond said questioning of the bus drivers yielded no new lead. In attempting to reconstruct the crime, Sapp said the entry into the living room was made through a window on the west side. A sawhorse had been brought from the northeast corner of the house and placed beneath the window, which is about 6 feet above the ground. Sapp said the assailant apparently climbed through the 2-paned lower half of the window after knocking it out with his fist or some object. He then crawled across the grand piano next to the window, leaving an undetermined print on top. Girl resisted fiercely. Sapp said officers could speculate only on the assault that followed. Miss Christman is believed to have been struck while trying to use the phone, locating in a wall niche behind the living room and the dining room. She fled into the kitchen, where she probably was struck again in a punching manner by some pipe-like weapon, which left round wounds 2/5 of an inch in diameter upon her face and head. She ran from the kitchen into the hall, but was overcome there and then probably dragged back into the living room near the piano where she was attacked. The rapist apparently obtained the electric iron cord from the utility room off the hall as he fought with the 135-pound girl. Blood was found near the phone, on the refrigerator in the kitchen, on the hall walls, on a chair in the living room, and beneath the girl's body. How the assailant left the house was not determined because the back door, which had been locked when the Romacks left, was ajar, and the front door was unlocked. The porch light, which had been turned off, was lit. The lights in the house were on, and the Venetian blinds on the front windows were open. The blinds on the west side of the living room were closed. Furniture in the room had not been moved or upset. Police find footprints. Police found several footprints beneath the window, which were covered with ice, Sapp said. A coroner's jury viewed the body at 2:20 p.m. yesterday at the Parker funeral service. Members were Harold Cox, W.E. Christian, Charles W. Romer, E.F. Ruther, L.T. Proctor, and Grover Owen. 25 murder suspects are questioned. Headline: No good clues, Sapp declares. Highway patrolman aiding in search. Crime varies from recent attacks. Prosecuting attorney Carl F. Sapp said today that all law enforcement agencies are working on an around-the-clock basis in the search for the killer of Miss Janett Christman, who was raped and strangled Saturday night while she was babysitting. More than 25 men were questioned yesterday, Chief E.M. Gene Pond said after police began picking up suspects at 10 a.m. Chief Pond placed the force on 12-hour watches and all days off were canceled. Pond said rescheduling of duty would enable him to put 5 more men on investigation besides maintaining regular patrols. Highway Patrol helps. 2 state highway patrol troopers from Jefferson City, Sergeants John Williams and H.H. Wells, under Lieutenant P.E. Cole, were assisting in the investigation. Williams, a laboratory technician, is making extensive tests of clues, including fingerprints in the home and footprints around the property. Also, cooperating are the Sheriff's Office and State Highway Patrol Sergeant James Junkins and Trooper L.R. Schwartz. The entire investigation is under Sapp's direction. No tangible clues. There are no tangible suspects at this time, Sapp said, but we still are evaluating clues. In a KFRU radio broadcast last night, Sapp appealed to all citizens to aid in the hunt by reporting prowlers or unusual noises around their homes. Greg, 2.5-year-old son of Mr. and Mrs. Romack, 1015 Stewart Road, was questioned by his father in the hope the child heard or saw something during the night. Romack told Sapp the boy was unable to tell him anything and evidently slept through the struggle between Miss Christman and her assailant. Two men, perhaps. We're going to work on the theory that one man did it, Sapp said, but it might have been two men. Sapp said that as far as investigations show, now there is no similarities between this case and the two rapes and attempted rape last fall, except for the general location of the crimes. Sapp did point out the similarity between this case and one in 1946 when Floyd Cochran raped and killed Mary Lou Jenkins, not more than 2 blocks from the Romack home. She also was strangled with an electric cord. Cochran was convicted of the slaying and executed in the gas chamber at Jefferson City in September 1947. Jake Bradford, charged with the attempted rape of a Stevens College day student last November and the rape of a babysitter last October, is to be tried March 28th in circuit court. Both of these crimes occurred within a few blocks of where Miss Christman was killed. Prowler reported. Miss Sarah Johnson, 1004 Locust Street, who was babysitting at the home of R.G. Wiley, 42 West Boulevard South, Saturday night, told police yesterday that a prowler had tried the back door of the Wiley home about 10 p.m., but finding it locked, disappeared down the rear driveway. The incident occurred about half an hour before Janett Christman was slain only 2 blocks away, police estimated. Miss Wiley said this morning that their collie dog, which always challenged anyone approaching the house, has been missing since Friday night. The dog has been with the family for 5 years and has never disappeared before, she said. The Romacks have been staying with his father, R.W. Romack, 4 West Boulevard South, since the murder. Sapp and assisting police officers will be on a television cast tonight over KSD-TV St. Louis. If you or someone you know has information on this case, please contact your local authorities or contact me, Detective Ken Mains, at www.kenmains.com. And remember, it's not about the prosecution or the defense. It's about the truth.